Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video of LRSSJ4 Goku coming up this Friday, and the potential of stage number 8 dropping for the Birth of the Shadow Dragons event against Omega. We're going to go through Omega's stats and what he does. So don't forget to drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, all the support is very much appreciated, and let's get into it. So one asterisk to note immediately is, of course, this could potentially not actually come out alongside Global, with, you know, the thank you celebration being kind of split up on Global with Heroes coming out. We could see it come with Goku, we could see it come in December. We'll have to see. Either way, we're gonna get the video up, we're gonna break this event down, we're gonna go through what he does. And one thing immediately that I've noticed with Omega is, of course, with Global getting this later than JP because of us sharing worldwide with JP at the same time and us getting Fusion Zamasu in the red zone, Omega on paper, or at least stats wise, is a little bit easier than Fusion Zamasu naturally because JP got this before Dismal Future edition of red zone. However, what he lacks in numbers compared to Zamasu, he still hits hard, but what he lacks in numbers compared to him, he will more than make up for in gimmicks. So there is 3 phases in total, the first one being Tech, where he starts with 33 million HP, 320k on a basic, which, I mean, compared to what we've seen, isn't actually the most. You know, Fusion Zamasu was doing 500k immediately, but that can still catch some units. That will still do some damage to certain units in the game, especially units that need to build up. It does give you a little bit more leeway. It does give you a bit more breathing room with this being a 3-phase fight, and not being as hard as Fusion Zamasu immediately and hitting as hard. It does allow your units a little bit more leeway to actually build up and allow them to get going. There's 100k defense, 65% damage reduction, and attacks 8 times in 1 turn. On super attack, and again, this is where the gimmicks are going to kick in and make up for the lack of numbers compared to Zamasu, he will raise his defense by 30% on super, and he is guaranteed to stun you. So that unit sitting in slot 1 may not even get to super attack, but stuns naturally are just generally quite jarring, but he will bulk himself up a little bit with that 30% defense raise. So, you know, you may be in this phase a little bit longer than you want to be and need to be. But as I said, this is where the gimmicks kind of make up for the lack of numbers. He has a second version of his super attack where he does pretty much the exact same thing, but instead of stunning, he will seal you. So either way, doesn't really make much of a difference which one he decides to do, aside from the fact they're both quite jarring to deal with. On the super attack though, he will do 800k. So again, what he's lacking in numbers, because Zamasu's doing like 1.3 to 1.4 straight away. However, 800k can still catch some units out. Again, this is turn 1. This is where a lot of units in the game, like the majority of units in the game, barring a handful, are just starting out. They're making their first appearances, they need to super attack, they need to build up whatever it is in their passive, they need to stack, whichever. That 800k damage, while it's not on the level of like 1.4, and you may not get one-shotted immediately, unlike against Fusion Zamasu, the 800k to units that need to build up, which again are the majority, will still do some damage. But again, at least here, you do get some leeway to actually build your units up. But we're not done with the gimmicks. Of course, like usual, you can't stun, you cannot seal. However, he does have a 7% chance to dodge your attacks. So it may not happen too often, but he can dodge you just to be that little bit extra. Not only that as well, he also disables your dodge. So whereas of course against Fusion Zamasu, you could have units that dodge him in the beginning with all of the damage he's going to bring out to you along with the AoEs. Not only can Omega in the beginning raise his defense, seal you, stun you, dodge himself, but you can't dodge him. So no matter what, even though this isn't as high numbers wise as Fusion Zamasu, you can't dodge. You don't have an outlet aside from items and just generally surviving or taking the brunt of the damage and just hoping for the best. Not only that as well, he will reduce damage received from all types except int types by 40%. So your non-int type units, your non-type advantage units here, we're doing a little bit less damage, unfortunately. Moving on to the second phase, Omega will be strength this time round. He goes up to 40 million HP, 400k on a basic, 130k defense with 68% damage reduction, 9 attacks in a turn. But here's where more gimmicks come in, and this is where their AoEs start. His first AoE will do 400k damage, his second AoE though will do a little bit less at 360, By this point, some of your units would have had the time to build up a bit. Not saying that they're going to be completely fine. You can still take damage here again, especially if these AoEs happen before, you know, some units need to super attack first before they're hit. So these two AoEs, if they happen before that, you're going to be open to a bit of damage. You're going to be susceptible to taking a bit of damage, along with a 400k basic as well. Like, Omega's doing a bit of damage here again, not on the same level as Fusions and Masu. This is where the AoEs come in and make things a little bit more difficult, and if I'm being completely honest, kind of jarring. On super attack though, it will do 1.2 million damage, which is still quite a bit to do in, you know, a second phase. You know, a lot of units can still be caught by that. Some just won't get one shot though, but you'll still take quite a bit of damage. However, Omega will raise his attack by 50%. So if Omega decides to super attack early, yeah, shit's getting serious, because if he super attacks like in slot 1, yeah, your slot 1 unit might be fine, but Omega has just raised his attack by 50%, which means this basic is doing more than 400k, this first AoE is doing more than 400k, and this second AoE is doing more than 360k. So overall, Omega will be doing even more damage, along with an early super attack happening, which means if there's AoEs are like, again, before certain units need to super attack, they're going to be taking even more damage. So again, while the numbers here aren't on the level of Fusions and Masu, with Global getting that first before stage 8 of the Shadow Dragon event, the gimmicks are what's going to make this more difficult. Like, Omega doesn't hit soft, like he does hit hard, it's just not as strong as the Masu, but the gimmicks are more than going to make up for that. You know, literally in the beginning, we've had Sealing, we've had Stunning, disables dodge, he dodges himself, raises defense. Now we have AoEs, 2 of them by the way, raises his attack. You know, he's still doing 1.1 million on a super, 400k on a basic can still catch people, 400k on an AoE can still catch people. However though, you can now dodge. That is what's handy, and that's going to be very handy with those AoEs, but you can now dodge. Similar procedure again, no attack and defense reduction, can't seal him, can't stun him. However, he does recover his HP. So the main goal of this one is to not only avoid as much damage as possible, at least now you can dodge, is going to be get in and out of this phase as quick as possible, so you're not stuck in it with Omega healing himself. Shouldn't be too difficult to contend with, but again, this is where the gimmicks are going to make up for, you know, the lack of damage compared to a Zamasu. The final phase is Int. He has 75 million HP, so that HP does take a massive rise. He goes up to 500k on a basic, 150k defense, 75% damage reduction, can attack 10 times in one turn, and he keeps both of his AoEs. However, instead of one being weaker than the other, he's doing 500k on one and 500k on the other. So again, those units that need to super attack first before being hit, if they happen early on, before they actually get the chance to super, that 500k may actually do some damage. But one of the major benefits, again, with this being a 3-turn fight and being a little bit weaker than Fusions and Masu, is those units that need to take the time to build up will more than likely be way past the point of being built up by this point, and they'll be at their best. So there is that. But the gimmicks do carry on. So not only is there 2 AoEs and are doing even more damage, and one doesn't do less, on super attack now, Omega will lower your defense by 40%. So again, if the super attack happens early and, you know, a unit has their defense lowered and then gets hit with basics and all the AoEs, it's gonna hurt. If you get the chance to super attack first, at least you kind of have the extra padding, the extra defense before you get it lowered. You may still take some damage, but at least you get a bit extra in before you know, get super attack and have your defense lowered. So that can catch you out, or can catch certain units out. The one benefit is you can still dodge here. So you can go from having your defense lowered by 40% and his basics and AoEs doing even more damage, or you can just dodge it completely and completely avoid the reduction of your defense, which is quite nice. On super attack, you'll be doing 1.4 million, again, while lowering your defense and doing all of this kind of damage and even more once he does lower your defense, depending on where the super attack comes from. So there is that. Again, usual. You cannot lower his attack and defense. You cannot seal him, you cannot stun him, he does lose his HP recovery, and again, you can dodge him. So, you know, naturally on paper, this isn't going to look as difficult as Fusions of Masu because we have got this after when JP got it because of Worldwide. However, these type of numbers can still catch you out. These type of numbers can still do damage to quite a few units in the game. Naturally, Fusions of Masu is just that extra level above of he's just that hard that he could probably one-shot the majority of units in the game. Hence why you have to use items in the beginning to get you through to the final phase. Whereas a Mega, you're going to have a little bit more leeway compared to what us global players are used to. And we actually have kind of some time to build those units up without the risk of it being one shot. Can you still take a ton of damage? Yes, this 320k can still catch you. This 800k can still catch you. But at least we have a bit of time to build them up before you get here, and especially on the final phase. And as I've already said, what a Mega now lacking damage because Fusions of Masu exists, he's more than making up for with all the gimmicks he has. You know, as I said, in phase 1, he's sealing, he's stunning, he's raising his defense. You know, you can't dodge him here. You can lower his attack and defense, but you can't dodge him. There's also the damage reduction by 40% against int, except for int types. The AoEs in phase 2, him raising his attack by 50%, the HP recovery, the even more damage on AoEs here, lowering your defense. This is where the gimmicks are going to play a huge part and still make him a huge threat, and probably quite annoying. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you're new. I'll of course be covering this when it comes out with my initial run, then testing units out here as we have been. But I'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care, have a good rest of your day, and post.